Because we weren't there to witness them, the events of the past have long reigned in the shadows, evading the light of understanding. That was until the modern era invented the metamorphical torch, a necessary piece of equipment needed to finally expose what lurks in the darkness, and we're either left in shock or in awe of the truth that we've learned. Number 10. The Front Curtain opens in the 1930s, with tensions rising, and it culminates in the theatrical performance that is our lives. It was the dawn of the Second World War, and the global conflict between the Axis powers and the Allied powers had reached a tipping point. It would be Germany's inflammatory decision that would lead to the inevitable collapse that saw unnecessary massacres. In 1939 Germany, under dictatorship, they invaded Poland, and what followed was the most fatal war in all of human history. 60 million demises, genocide, and the first use of nuclear weapons in history. For obvious reasons, these events were the most well-known. They dominated the historical conflict and served as a veil that concealed lesser-known undertakings that were just as atrocious. In recent years, we've learned that not only did the German soldiers abuse, torture, and slay their opponents, but they also stole important treasures, notable artworks, and irreplaceable artifacts. They also had a penchant for burning books. When the soldiers did find themselves with free time, they would also partake in the not-so-well-documented destruction of heritage sites and properties. This was the unmistakable purging of culture, a hallmark of totalitarian regimes. Among the key establishments reduced to rubble and dust was the Königsberg New Jewish Cemetery. The cemetery, a final resting place for the deceased, was located in Kaliningrad and had been in operation for only 10 years, opening first in 1928. It was host to an incredibly designed funeral hall, the creation of Erich Mendelsohn himself. Unfortunately, this German architect would watch as the soldiers stormed the sacred place and lay waste to it all. They invaded in 1938, just 1 year before the war. The hall lay in pieces, the tombs reduced, and the grief resurfaced. Eventually, the destruction of Königsberg Cemetery would fade from our collective memory, not even making it into the history books. But for several decades, the rubble would remain, a reminder to the people of Kaliningrad of the disturbing acts that took place there. In 2010, though, the historical site once more caught the public's eye. Jewish individuals who were part of a historical society in Berlin decided to inspect the area after discovering that something had long gone unnoticed. As they sifted through the clutter of stones and dusted away the leafy debris, they would find something untouched by the dictatorship. It was a singular gravestone toppled onto its back. A name was written on the back: Jacob Klimowski. According to the Historical Society, the Jewish Klimowski family was known to them, but that's about where the information ends. The researchers found no further clues about who this arcane individual was. There seemed to be no record of him. So for a decade, the question lingered: who was this guy? The historians and researchers dedicated to finding the families of the lost victims of the war opted to not give up. They wanted answers just as much as anybody, even if it meant searching and sleuthing for decades. It would be these very efforts that eventually paid off, albeit 10 years later. The society was able to track down some of his descendants, who had no idea that their ancestor was among the era's more notable individuals. They didn't even know that among the hundreds buried in the cemetery that his grave was the only one left intact. Through DNA matching and record checking, it was confirmed that the researchers had found the right family. To give society greater insight into who Jacob really was, the descendants provided the very documents and photographs once thought lost. The very documents that revealed the life of the formerly unknown man. It was at the end of 2020 when the puzzle pieces were all put together, unveiling a forgotten mystery. Jacob, as it turned out, lived in Königsberg with his wife and their 2 children. He was a World War II veteran on the German side, a factor that shocked the historical community. In 1933, Jacob was 55 years old and required an urgent operation for unclear reasons. Due to alleged complications, he passed away shortly after, and was buried in the Königsberg New Jewish Cemetery. In 1939, at the dawn of the war, his family immigrated. His grandchildren and great-grandchildren would disperse all over the world. Today, they live in Israel, the United States, and Switzerland, and they had no idea who their grandfather and great-grandfathers were. A man, a sole surviving gravestone, a mystery, a veteran, and a testament to the notion that all is not lost. Number 9. The fascination with giant reclusive apes like Bigfoot and the Yeti may be rooted in history. Before the arrival of Homo sapiens in Asia, the largest known primate, Gigantopithecus, existed. These extinct apes, standing 6 to 10 feet tall and weighing 440 to 1,100 pounds, roamed southern China during the Pleistocene epoch, possibly extending into Vietnam and Thailand. They may have coexisted with Homo erectus as recently as 100,000 years ago, though this is unconfirmed due to ambiguous skeletal remains. The mystery of their extinction, which was not due to human hunting, was finally solved in 2024. Researchers determined that the species' inability to adapt led to its demise around 100,000 years ago. Analysis of ancient climate and fossils revealed that Gigantopithecus was too large and too specialized of a feeder to survive the climate changes that came 700,000 to 600,000 years ago, when the region dried out, turning canopy forests into shrub-filled grasslands. Their preferred diet of fruit then became scarce. The wear on their teeth shows they resorted to less nutritious bark and dry twigs out of desperation. Unlike smaller primates that adapted by taking to the treetops for new food sources, the Gigantopithecus's massive size and slow pace prevented adaptation, ultimately leading to their extinction. Number 8. The Tibetan Plateau, one of the highest inhabited places on Earth, was home to ancient, unknown civilizations on its eastern fringes. The Neolithic group flourished in the rugged highlands until a sudden mass exodus around 2000 BC, which coincided with the mysterious disappearance of their staple crop, millet. This regional collapse puzzled archaeologists for millennia. For centuries, these early settlers relied on millet from northern China to sustain themselves and their livestock. After 4,000 years, the crop unexpectedly vanished, taking the civilization with it. 300 years later, new settlers successfully cultivated wheat and barley, leaving historians wondering why one crop failed while the others succeeded. The Tibetan millet mystery was finally solved in 2015 by an archaeological team led by Jade Guedes. Using new technology and evidence, they discovered that climate change, not only a modern issue, was the culprit. Millet had thrived during the warm Holocene climatic optimum, but around 2000 BC, a sudden cooling period made its cultivation impossible, as published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. With their main food source gone, the original inhabitants were forced to abandon the plateau. Guedes' team also found that later success of wheat and barley was due to their ability to thrive in colder conditions, replacing millet as the Tibetan staple. Ironically, modern global warming may favor millet today, as the Tibetan Plateau is now one of the fastest warming regions, potentially allowing the forgotten seeds to resurface. Number 7. El Niño and La Niña are climate patterns that occur only in the Pacific Ocean, yet they can affect weather on a global scale. During regular Pacific Ocean conditions, the trade winds blow in a westerly direction along the equator. The waters warm from South America and subsequently move towards Asia. To replace this warm water, a process known as upswelling brings cold water from the depths of the seas to the surface. El Niño and La Niña are opposites of one another, two climate patterns that break the norm. Episodes of either of them can last anywhere from 9 to 12 months at a time, occurring every 2 to 7 years. Both cycles are known to cause wildfires, affect weather, and impact ecosystems as a whole. El Niño is found to occur more frequently and is characterized by weakened trade winds. The warm water is pushed back towards the west coast of America. The term means little boy in Spanish, and was first noted back in the 1600s. The occurrence is known to significantly affect weather patterns, causing dry spells in some regions and flooding in others. Through unfaltering analysis, researchers and scientists have learned a great deal about these climate patterns, which should sound like bizarre, inexplicable phenomena. But we know almost everything there is to know about them, so where does the mystery come in? It turns out when researchers made their assumptions and assertions about El Niño, they became far too confident in their ideas. Scientific models attempting to explain the fluctuations suggested that the Earth's bobbling through space was the cause of these unpredictable events. It was claimed that varying levels of solar radiation affect the strength of these occurrences. The models insinuated that past events were typically weaker than those we experience today. But recently, this very idea has been challenged, and an unexpected element has emerged to provoke the narrative: seashells. Researchers believe that they had accurately mapped out the past transgressions of El Niño events, but an unassuming cache of seashells suggested otherwise. By analyzing a great pile of shells that were discarded by the indigenous people of what is now modern-day Peru, thorough evidence, a climatic record of sorts, emerged. Scientists were looking into the oxygen ratios within the shells, only to find something daunting. They didn't match the patterns predicted by the models the community had been using to base their assumptions. The analysis of the shells revealed that the entire model and subsequent conclusions were all erroneous. El Niño, it seems, had nothing to do with solar input, and instead, researchers found that massive amounts of ice and water dumped from melting glaciers have been greatly underestimated. Not only were they wrong about the cause of the event, but scientists were also incorrect about how long El Niños had been occurring. The seashells provided the answers to this too. It turns out such activity was present in the Pacific Ocean 10,000 years ago, and was both frequent and strong during the early Holocene period. Number 6. Making it onto the list of the 7 most mysterious archaeological finds on Earth was the Gospel of the Lots of Mary, an artifact that certainly fit the list at one point. The book was at least 1,500 years old and contained an undecipherable gospel. Many had tried to crack the code of this ancient manuscript, but all would fail. The book was written in the ever-mysterious Egyptian Coptic language, which uses the Greek alphabet. Since its discovery, it's believed that, like other gospels, this gospel describes the birth, life, and death of Mary's one and only son. This was merely an assumption, as the language used to encode the secret passages was undecipherable. Eventually, the Gospel of the Lots of Mary faded from public view, while still occupying a great deal of space in the minds of a few historians. Historians were particularly fascinated with this miniature booklet and set out to uncover the truths that it kept concealed in its pages. In February of 2015, their hard work would finally pay off, with the title "Previously Unknown Gospel Has Been Deciphered," dominating online news headlines. They discovered that the Gospel of the Lots of Mary is like no other manuscript. When researchers first translated the Coptic word for gospel, they too assumed it was nothing more than a biography, but they continued to dissect each portion, and they were left with the surprise and an unrelenting question. Is the Gospel of the Lots of Mary about forbidden oracles? The opening paragraph certainly did mislead the reader. It read, quote, "The Gospel of the Lots of Mary, the mother of the Lord Jesus Christ, to whom Gabriel, the archangel, brought the good news. He who will go forward with his whole heart will obtain what he seeks. Only do not be of two minds." As they continued to unweave the ancient language, they discovered that the gospel was less of a life story and more of a magic 8-ball, a predictor of the future, a helper that solves problems for people. Now noted to be an oracle book, their efforts revealed a series of 37 questions and their answers, with very little mention of Jesus. The well-used text was used, it appears, for divination purposes. Someone seeking an answer to a question that had been plaguing their mind may have sought out the individual who possessed this very manuscript. That question would be spilled, and a random selection process would reveal the solution to the problem. The owner of the book would be the diviner, who would interpret the written oracles and explain how the individual facing the issue should respond. Each of the 37 passages is written vaguely, leaving each open to interpretation. Oracle number 34, for example, reads, "Go forward immediately. This is a thing from God. You know that, behold, for many days you are suffering greatly, but it is of no concern to you, because you have come to the haven of victory." Dominating the texts are several scenarios of hardship, violence, suffering, and occasional threats. Though many lot books existed in the past, specifically made to predict the user's future, this manuscript was unique for one word: gospel. The team has never come across any other lot book in the archives that's been referred to as a gospel. Number 5. Nestled in Morocco's high Atlas Mountains is the village of Around, a blend of natural beauty and a rich history steeped in cultural heritage. The mountains, picturesque and serene, can also be hostile and dangerous, yet it's this very environment that's been home to the Berbers for centuries. Ijreren Dreren, they call it, a term meaning mountains of mountains. A fitting name for the imposing natural formation that stretches thousands of kilometers, culminating in the impenetrable barrier as so seen today. But it's not the mountains that had the archaeology community in a stir for more than 130 years. It's the sourceless collection of rocks that made up the very pile upon which the village of Around has been built. 13,000 feet above sea level, the town hangs perilously atop the massive heap, balancing on the edge of steep drop-offs, tempting fate as it sits upon the major tectonic fault. For decades, experts stood in awe of the great rock pile, mystified by how it came to collect there. Only theories would be offered in place of answers, such as the idea that the movement of a glacier deposited them there. In 2014, though, a group of scientists finally figured it out, attributing the accumulation to seismic activity that occurred some 4,500 years ago. Through dating techniques and analysis, that theory was proven to be partially correct. A glacier may have been present, eroding the cliff face and making it vulnerable to collapse. 7,000 years later, now unstable and susceptible to collapse, researchers discovered that an earthquake shook the mountains, triggering a massive rock avalanche. The rubble tumbled down to the base of the mountain, piling on top of one another, forming a mound of its own. The nearby major tectonic fault added further supporting evidence to this idea. Geomorphologist Philip Hughes and his colleagues joined efforts to solve the long-standing mystery. Through aging the rocks there, they discovered the isotope beryllium-10, formed when cosmic rays hit quartz in surface rocks. The levels of this isotope can determine when the rocks became exposed to open air, ultimately revealing when the deposit was formed. Determining their age allowed researchers to trace records and identify natural disasters, which led to the discovery of the earthquake that occurred 4,500 years ago. The destructive avalanche and the no longer mysterious rock pile offered the perfect site for a village to be built upon. But beyond this former enigmatic element, there exists more mystery and Around, with several mysterious ailments being documented among those who visited there. Some even say the land is cursed. Number 4. Modern Illinois was home to Cahokia, an ancient city known for its unique culture and massive earthen mounds used for homes, burials, and ceremonies. Around 120 mounds spanned a 15 square kilometer area, supporting a bustling community of farmers, artisans, and astronomers. Cahokia began in 700 AD, expanding by 1050 AD into a metropolis larger than London or Paris. But just 200 years later, the entire civilization inexplicably vanished, leaving behind only the earthworks. For centuries, the fate of the Cahokia people remained a mystery, with theories limited to political or environmental disasters lacking concrete evidence. In the early 2020s, the mystery was solved by examining Horseshoe Lake near the city center, a crucial feature previously overlooked by experts. Dredging the lake for evidence of human activity revealed that Cahokia had regularly flooded before its founding, a threat that temporarily subsided, allowing the city to flourish. Unexpectedly, around 1200 AD, the intense flooding returned. Sediment cores revealed a thick layer of silt from a flood severe enough to destroy crops and homes, forcing the evacuation of at least 15,000 people. Although the collapse wasn't immediate, continued flooding and troubles led to the civilization's slow decline, with the remaining people integrating into other communities until Cahokia vanished from the historical record. Number 3. In the non-canonical books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees, we learn of the Maccabean Revolt, a significant event detailed in biblical context regarding ancient Jerusalem during the Hellenistic period. In 1st Maccabees 133, we find the passage, "Then they fortified the city of David with a great strong wall and strong towers, and it became their citadel." Historians who have dissected the various aspects of biblical events came to believe that the passage was referring to the construction and establishment of the Acra. It would be this creation, a symbol of foreign oppression, that became the focal point of the conflict amid the revolt, where a Jewish uprising stood against Seleucid rule and Hellenistic influence. The uprising was led by Judas Maccabeus and his brothers, who wished to reclaim religious freedom. The Acra's presence was a reminder of foreign domination and religious persecution, with its destruction acting as a pivotal moment in restoring Jewish autonomy. The Acra, meaning stronghold, was founded by the Greek ruler Antiochus Epiphanes, ruler of the Seleucid Empire, before being captured by Judas and subsequently destroyed. It's this very event and victory that is the focus of the Jewish festival known as Hanukkah, commemorating the rededication of the Second Temple. Historians and interpreters, like many other cities and places mentioned in the Bible, believed that the Acra did in fact exist and lay in ruins in an unknown place, likely paved over. With the exact location of the Acra a subject of debate among scholars and archaeologists, the hunt for the fabled stronghold began, and various excavations took place in Jerusalem, with hopes that some evidence would emerge. It's long been thought that the forgotten piece of history was located in the southeastern part of the city, near the Temple Mount. Pieces of fortification walls, pottery, and other artifacts suggested this much, but excavation after excavation yielded no confirming ruins. The mystery of the Acra's location would plague historians for well over a century, with each failed expedition dwindling the hopes of ever finding it and forcing them to consider whether the two sources that speak of Acra, the Book of Maccabees and the writings of Josephus Flavius, were suggesting the correct placement of the stronghold, suggesting that it was within the boundaries of the city of David. Turns out they weren't accurate. Unexpectedly, after abandoning all hope of ever finding the Acra, Israeli archaeologists finally made a breakthrough in November of 2015. The Israel Antiquities Authority in Jerusalem has been excavating the Givati parking lot since 2005, and over the next several years, more and more clues began to paint a very different picture of where the stronghold had been established. A decade after excavation began in 2015, the Acra was discovered, situated outside the city walls on a hill, a strategic setting that allows it to overlook the populated valley below. Its placement would have allowed the control of all traffic to the temple on Temple Mount. The ruins had long been plastered over time and time again, and would only re-emerge after 10 years worth of careful scraping, dusting, and chipping away at the generational layers that rested upon it. Beneath the accumulation of past lives, there lay the remnants of the fortified tower, an imposing wall, and a steep defensive embankment. Confirming their discovery, archaeologists would go on to find coins, jugs of wine, pieces of weaponry, and the same ballista stones and arrowheads that were launched all those years ago by the Hasmoneans amid their effort to conquer the Acra. Number 2. Palmyra, the ancient city of palms in the Syrian desert, was a vital trade and cultural center and an oasis on the silk routes between Asia and Europe. Incorporating its distinct local culture into the Roman Empire, it later gained independence under Queen Zenobia, forming the Palmyrene Empire by annexing parts of the Eastern Roman Empire. The city's architecture reflected a blend of Mesopotamian, Semitic, Levantine, Persian, and Islamic heritage. Despite extensive records, two questions long baffled historians. How did 100,000 people survive in the desert? And why was the city built there? Norwegian and Syrian researchers solved these mysteries in the mid-2000s. They found that the arid steppe was once green, supported by water reservoirs in Palmyra and surrounding farming villages. These communities collected annual rainfall of about 6 inches via channels to wet farmlands, providing a stable food supply. The city's location was strategic, not accidental. It provided an alternative to river routes controlled by kingdoms that charged high taxes. Persians or Parthians dominated the east, and Romans the west. Travelers seeking to evade these exorbitant river taxes cut through the desert. Seeing this trend, strategic individuals established Palmyra as a tax-free trade hub and rest stop, contributing significantly to ancient prosperity. The solution to these mysteries makes Palmyra a, quote, transparent piece of history. Number 1. There is an incredible, mystifying ancient artifact living at the British Museum that has now become the key to unlocking super-sensitive new technology that could hopefully help diagnose human disease and even detect biohazards at security checkpoints. These features all sound too specific and magical to be true, but they are the characteristics the Smithsonian Magazine describes for the colorful secret that is the Roman Lycurgus cup. At first glance, it looks like any other ornate glass chalice, another Roman masterpiece of glasswork depicting yet another legendary scene. In this case, the delicately woven gold details tell the story of King Lycurgus, or Lycurgus as some would say, of Thrace, who appears entangled in unforgiving vines. Upon discovering this chalice, archaeologists immediately found the mystery within, a mystery that became obvious instantly. Initially, the cup appears to be jade green, especially when lit from the front. But when lit from the back, something truly bizarre happens. The color changes as if by miracle. It turns into a crimson red, the color of warning, the tone of the fluid that keeps us alive. It would be this very puzzling enigma that confounded scientists for decades. Eventually, after much research, the Lycurgus cup was handed over to the British Museum in 1950, but its story wasn't over yet. The chalice remained the subject of analysis and investigation for the next 40 years, as experts sought a plausible explanation for why its color changes the way it does. That answer would come by 1990. Researchers from England managed to get shards of broken fragments, which they exploited beneath the microscope, only to discover something truly remarkable and maybe even a little bit scary. The Roman artisans were the pioneers of nanotechnology. It turns out that the makers of this cup had impregnated the glass with small slivers of silver and gold, ground as small as 50 nanometers in diameter. This is less than 1/1000th the size of a salt grain. The mixture was precise and intentional, suggesting the Romans knew exactly what they were doing. It appears that, once again, the ancient civilizations were one step ahead of us, as they've always been. They invented nanotechnology more than 1,000 years before modern science ever even considered the concept. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.